Welcome to Soulful Talks with Ellen. Hello, everyone. Hi. Here we are at Soulful Talks with Ellen. Today is Friday. We're September 2020 in La Prairie. And here's a Soulful Talk with one of my favorite people on earth. That's the mission of this talk show, is to interview amazing people who have a lot to say about things that are maybe non-tangible, things that are deal with life and soul and the way we react to life lessons. And today we have here is our interviewee, Eleni.
Hi.
She's my dear coach. She's an amazing, beautiful woman that I love so much. And I have actually prepared some questions for her. And she prepared diligently. We talked about it for a little while. I think we didn't prepare that much.
No, I like to improvise
Yes,
also.
that's the best, of course.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. So welcome to La Prairie, Eleni, actually.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Look at this beautiful space, everybody.
Yes. We decided to have a beautiful background.
It's gorgeous.
Prepare for the weekend ahead.
Yes.
Since it's Friday, so we know it's coming tomorrow.
I'm excited.
Yes, so Eleni, tell us in 2-3 sentences who you are.
So who I am, and I like to not define who I am by my profession at first. So I'm a very multi-passionate person. I'm a very curious person. I'm always learning. I'm a huge advocate for joy. So joy, I take joy very seriously. As funny as that sounds, but it's a big deal for me. Yeah, I just love life, and I love to be enthusiastic about it and live it fully.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I am.
You're optimistic, but you have this contagious optimism. When somebody's
Yes.
around you, they will smile after 10 minutes.
I love it. It's a reflex. I call myself in my family, I'm the black sheep of optimism. You know, usually people feel like they're the black sheep of something dark, and
Yes.
I'm the black sheep of optimism.
Yes,
So it's getting warm.
It's getting warm here.
There you go.
Okay, yes. So Eleni, you're a life and leadership coach.
Yes.
What is that? Tell us.
So I have a mission statement, and so my mission statement is I believe that if you know yourself, understand yourself, and love yourself, you and all of us, we have the capacity to be a leader in our lives and the lives of others. And so a lot of people will come to me for personal issues and problems, and the basis is always being clear about who you are, devoid of society and your upbringing and parenthood. So to make sure that all of the motivations and narratives that are in your head are your own, and separate the ones that aren't, and kind of redefine yourself. Similarly, in a leadership position, many times people are not leading from a place of who they are and what they know. And so I help leaders get to know themselves better and establish their values and lead from their values. Because if they get to know that process, then that extends in the people who they're leading or shepherding, right?
Right.
But until you've had that interaction with yourself, that process of knowing and understanding yourself, how are you supposed to lead others in that way? So it goes kind of hand in hand, and typically when leaders will come and see me, it's very, strategic and goal oriented. But before you know it, we're talking about much more deep and personal things. And from a personal level, once people start, and I would say as yourself, working on yourself, you get a big initiative of leadership to want to lead and impact others in the same way. So that's kind of how I see the marriage of the two together.
You have such a cool profession.
I
Such a
love
cool
my
job.
profession. I love my profession, yes.
It's as if you're polishing the human being, you're cleaning a bit, you're encouraging them, and then they start shining, and then you look at them. It's beautiful. I don't know. I don't think I would ever want to be a coach. I like being coached more. But what I love is the way you are so brave and courageous in really asking the right questions and waiting for the answer. You've always doing this to me. You're asking and you're waiting. No. Try again. Let's think deeper. Like, you're so brave in that. I like how you're doing it with me.
Thank you. Well, I think that what coaching has taught me is it's incredible what happens when you hold space, right? And in the psychological language, holding space is literally doing that, asking and waiting and seeing what happens, because in typical conversations we feel really awkward about those quiet pauses and those spaces. And if either you're gonna have somebody who's not gonna say anything, or you're gonna have talkers, let's say as you and I, they're gonna take up the space because it's just awkward. And I had to learn, as somebody who's very extroverted and likes to talk and likes to guide a conversation, to sometimes just hold that space. And it's amazing because people are not used to always being given that space to have that second. And what usually happens is that when you ask a question, there are those layers, and the space permits you to go deeper into those layers. So the space is a beautiful, magical area.
Another part of you, that space shows sometimes how people are, they feel uncomfortable, and so they start either running away or hanging up if I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
Because I feel that something is too vulnerable for them. So then I just know, okay, this time it didn't work. I'll just let it be.
Exactly.
And run away from space.
And that's about their comfort, right? And sometimes the space is an indication for the person who's giving it that maybe it's too much space right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of testing the waters when you're working with somebody in a more vulnerable way. And everybody has a very different journey. Everybody has a very different process. The way I'm going to coach you is not the way I'm going to coach somebody else. So it's kind of like you're learning a new language with every new client. And my goal is to always say, okay, let me get into their head, let me get into their energy, let me get into their comfort zone, because you need to establish the trust in order for somebody else to be willing to open up with you. Yeah.
I'm gonna be vulnerable myself, and I'll say that when I met Eleni last fall, I was in a really bad place. I think I hated the world and I hated myself. I was very bitter. I felt like the ground was jelly under my feet. I felt lost. I said to myself that I'm not gonna trust or love anyone anymore. I was dark inside. I said to myself, I'm gonna be a bitch now. I literally said this to myself. And then when I met Eleni, I said to myself, oh, I have to talk to this girl. There's something about her. Wow, and I really decided that, 2020 is gonna be that year. I'm going to do that. And so when I came to you, and I think you saw it, I was very resentful and bitter. I was seeking vengeance. I wanted to hurt someone. This is true. This is something that we're talking about taboo things now, because usually people are always trying to show how pink and rosy they are. But I felt hurt. I wanted to hurt. That's how we are. When somebody hurts you, you hurt back.
It's what we're taught in many ways.
So then, the question is, Eleni, when someone comes to you and they say, okay, I'm gonna be vulnerable with you, I have this problem, it's too much for me, it's overwhelming, I feel pain in my body, I don't know what to do about it, I'm obsessed about it. How do you approach the client? How do you start this healing process in a way?
It's a good question. I think one thing that many people will do when they're trying to improve is that they're going to want to fix it right away. And I think that that's the end goal. But I think that it's very important to acknowledge the pain. And something that I say is also acknowledge the humanity, right? A lot of people strive for perfection. A lot of people strive to always be their best and want things to go perfectly in a certain way, whether it's in their life, in their relationship, in their job, whatever.
Exactly.
And sometimes things are not perfect. And so the idea is to kind of embrace the imperfection of life and the imperfection of humanity, and acknowledge the fact that what they are feeling is valid.
Yeah.
And once we acknowledge what you're feeling and we sit with it and say, hey, it's okay, then the next question is, what would you like to feel instead, right? So coaching is a lot about current state and what the future state is going to be. And then the next part is, woo, we have a friend.
Go away.
Go
It's
away.
not the time. Be.
It's okay. I'm not scared. But the next part is to
Oh, sorry about that.
you can't control it. They smell something. They like my perfume.
They always come to see us when we're here with the kids. I don't know.
So the next part is to get a better understanding of why these feelings are important for you, why that betterment is important for you, because the goals really have to come from the client, right? So it's this idea of like, okay, well, you're feeling like this now. How would you like to feel? And why is that important to you? And as soon as we can associate whys to your goal, then, you know, we start to get a deeper connection, and the motivation really comes from the client.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea. But it's baby steps. It's not just like, okay, let's shove all of that crap aside. And no, it's like, the crap is there for a reason.
Yes.
We need to understand it, right?
When I started with you, you said a lot the word humanity. Let's recognize the person in their humanity, and it was new for me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that, actually?
So for me, humanity means the fact that we're made imperfect, we are imperfect, and so mistakes and errors and trials and tribulations and challenges are part of our normal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that a lot of people, for whatever reasons, don't see that. They see it as the exception. I see it as a very natural part of the process. And because I see it as a natural part of the process, it's something that I want to bring into the experience of coaching so that they can get comfortable with it and have it kind of as a normalcy, as a standard, so to speak. So if you're going into a session and say, are you coming in with the expectation of you being perfect, Elena, or are you coming in with the expectation of you being human, Elena? And I really do want people to come in with the expectation of being human, the human version of who you are, because that is the version of who you are. And similarly, a lot of times, let's say you're going to talk about your friendships, or you're going to talk about your romantic relationships, or your relationships with your peers at work, or your boss. You also need to accept and embrace the humanity of them.
Exactly.
And when there's a humanity and compassion towards yourself, and a humanity and compassion towards the other, that's when the work can really start. Because before then, it's kind of, you know, I use this analogy in dating sometimes, that a lot of people will see a potential partner that they're excited for.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh
my God.
I'm good. They'll say, oh, I'm excited. I want this person to like me. You know, so if I see a guy that's tall and handsome, I'll say, oh, I want this guy to like me. But I have this feeling that maybe I have this feature or this thing that he might not like, so let me perfect it. So what happens is I put on a mask.
Yes.
Right? This same person, let's say he's interested in me, he might think the same thing. And so then he'll be like, ooh, let me put on a mask to perfect myself. And so the point of meeting, we're meeting each other with a mask on. And what we fall in love with, or what we fall for, what we're attracted to, is the mask of said perfection. And I'm doing in quotations, right? And over time, we get resentful, and they say, well, why are you changing? Why are you different? Why didn't you show the true version of yourself to me? Or I expected you to be a certain way. Why are you not what you are? And the idea here is like, well, if we didn't wear masks from the beginning, and also if we didn't expect others to wear masks, we expected others to more so be imperfect and human, and we approach others in an imperfect and human way, then the basis of our relationship would be with an understanding that this is what humanity really is, versus having the expectation that everybody needs to look a certain way, act a certain way, behave a certain way all the time, which is not realistic.
Exactly.
And it is not our experience, really.
Yes. And people do that so much.
Yeah.
They do that so much, even at work, and then with friends, and you 3 months you're like this, then somebody else appears, and you're saying, okay, who's the real her, especially in friendships with other women. It's not easy, but it's so interesting. Oh my God. The question was for me, I wanted to really to ask you that. When did you hear the calling to become a coach? What happened there in your life that you said, oh, I want to do this?
Oh my goodness. It's a big question. So coaching kind of fell into my lap. I wasn't looking for it per se. I was in a period where I was trying to get my life back on track after a difficult breakup. After I moved back home, I used to live in Mexico, and I hadn't really focused on my career. I had focused on somebody else's career, and so I was trying to find the ground under my feet. And I was dabbling at that time in performance consulting, which is a part of the master's that I had done. And so I was working alongside someone. She had a lot of projects, and it was a nice mentorship for me. And so I really enjoyed the idea of improving the environment for people, especially in businesses and processes and procedures. But I also realized that my favorite part was actually talking to the person as is and say, well, why is it that you have this challenge, and why is it that you have this problem? And for me, consulting was a lot about telling the other person what to do. And I realized I didn't like so much to tell people what to do. I really wanted them to understand themselves, you know, what their goals were, and what their motivations were, and what their blocks and challenges were. And so this one day, this thought came into my head, which a lot of my epiphanies they pop into them like my head, like ideas. And I thought to myself, what's the difference between coaching and consulting? And so I looked it up, and, you know, they said, well, coaching is a lot about helping the person find the tools within them.
Okay.
So you can guide them to solve their own problems, versus consulting is giving the other person the solution.
Okay.
And I didn't want to just give the other person the solution. And then, you know, I don't know if it was the universe or the SEO engines and Google, how it works, but coaching started to pop into my searches and my Facebook and everything. And I took a course, and I said, oh wow, I have intrinsically been coaching in my more intimate relationships without knowing. And I actually felt really moved, and I said, this really just feels like an extension of who I am. And so I did some classes. I started practicing for free at first with other people, and I saw that the feedback was great. I saw that it lit me up. I felt it was a good match, and I just kind of ran with it. And, you know, not long after, I met you, and you were one of my first and most bright and ambitious clients. And it's true. She's really good. And, you know, I don't see myself really, at least for this moment, doing anything else. And I really feel that it's home for me. It's an extension of who I am. And I love helping other people shine. It's such a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
Like, you hardly have any bitterness left about you.
Exactly.
You're always smiling.
Exactly.
You're always energetic.
Exactly. I think the first thing that I learned with Eleni was about self-compassion. This was a big deal for me. And I remember that day when I said to myself, I'm gonna stop saying bad things about me.
Yes.
I literally remember that day, and I did that. And now it doesn't matter how I feel, doesn't matter how I look. I just tell myself, well, I'll just go grab a coffee. Sometimes I'm very grumpy in the morning.
A lot of people are very grumpy in the morning, Elena, let's be honest.
And then you find out that there is no coffee in the house because my husband likes decaf.
Oh
And
no.
I'm like, decaf is like, what are you
Nothing.
teasing me with? Just kidding. But I'm like, just breathe, and I'm gonna try to tell my hubby that I'm gonna go buy real coffee, and, you know, I'll take it from there. And then something will happen in my day showing me that it's okay to be who you are. And I stopped saying bad things about me. This was one of the little things that I stopped doing with you, but it was so impactful over the time. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn, and this is again and I give you great credit for that. You taught me, you showed me what acceptance is. Something that I never knew about, something that I was resisting even. How come you accept life? You have to fight for a better life. I grew up with this idea that, you know, you have to always like strive for better. No, it's not enough. Strive for better. And it's so exhausting. And it's like, oh, you feel so drained. Because it's like running after something that always goes further away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then this acceptance came in. It's like, wow, tell us what acceptance is. You speak beautifully about that.
So acceptance is it's a very elaborate and not very simple concept, because the way I see it is acceptance is usually you're grieving a previous reality that you really wanted to happen, and so it's like a death of that reality. And acceptance is really about being okay with there being another reality. But if you look at the process of grieving, so grieving has like 5 stages. I think it's like anger, denial,
bargaining,
depression, bargaining, depression, and acceptance is the very last one. It's the very last one. So every time something doesn't go accordingly in your life, you have to go through that grieving, right? It could be like, I lost a job, I lost a partner, life is not where I lost a friend, life is not where I want it to be, or it's not how I imagined it to be. So it's like you're grieving the reality of what you had as an expectation. And so for me, the analogy that I like to use is, I like to use a lot of analogy with nature, is it's kind of embracing the season you're in, and it's having faith and trust, which is very difficult for a lot of people, that there's a lesson in this season. And although you are very focused on that thing, which is good, it's good to have a goal and a plan and a direction, oftentimes there's always a secret teaching in the season that you're in. And one of the rules that I have, that I've learned through other teachers, is what you resist persists, right? So when you're frustrated about things not going your way and you resist, like, stop not going my way, I want you to go my way, but if you resist the fact that the current needs to change, if you're surfing, you have to go with the current, you have to go with the wave. And similarly to like the pandemic that we're living, we have to go with the wave. And if you try to say like, oh no, but I don't like this wave, you're just gonna get under how many meters of like very strong ocean water, and you can drown. So acceptance is a lot about understanding that there's something bigger than you that's trying to happen, there's a lesson here that's trying to be learned. But it's difficult for us because we also have to understand that it's a grieving process. So a lot of people will say, I just want to change, I just want to accept this and move forward. And I will say, okay, be compassionate with yourself until you get there. At least you have the awareness that you need to accept that. But until that acceptance happens, be aware that you have to grieve a lot of things and give space for that grievance. Honor that grievance. And like, it's okay, you're allowed, but slowly and surely go that way.
So then that's why when I lost my job, which happened a month ago, second or third day, there was a day when I was sort of neutral towards it. Second day, I was extremely furious. And I kept saying to my husband, I don't deserve this. Third day, I said to myself, this can't be happening. I have to go back and talk to them. There was a mistake. So I was going through all these stages without even paying attention to it. But then what happened is, by the fourth day, I felt so exhausted. We went to Lake Stuckley, and we did some canoeing with the boys for the first time. And when I was there balancing there on the canoe, and I said to myself, nature is beautiful, there are so many things to learn. What am I doing? Why am I giving so much attention to that thing? I lost the job, that's it, let's close the chapter. And I remember that day in the evening when I said to my husband, I think I'm done. I think I'm gonna let it go. And you see like a canoe that's going into the water. And visualization helps me a lot personally when you're using analogies, and then I'm thinking about that and I'm saying, yeah, this happens to me like this. And so in my head is like letting go.
Well, that's a beautiful, beautiful example, but what you said is very important. The visualization and the analogies don't only help you, they help all of us, because emotions and all these challenges that we're going through, they're very, as you said at the beginning, abstract things. And having these examples and actually defining them and making them more tangible provides a guide for us. And so if we can bring awareness of these concepts and examples, or these roadmaps, so to speak, what happens is that the next time you go through an experience where things don't go your way,
Yeah.
if you have it at the level of awareness, you know, you're gonna tell yourself, oh, okay, this is exactly what's happening. I know to a certain extent what to expect here. I know that I had this one thing I wanted to happen and it's not happening, and so therefore now we're here. So I'm probably going to go through all of these phases, which means I probably have to be excuse me, really kind to myself, and I'm going to have this roller coaster of emotions, but at the end of it I know that acceptance is coming, and then I can move forward. But I need to be compassionate to myself in this period.